All righty, here we go. The man joins us, Jonathan Crompton, former Tennessee quarterback. It gets no better. Jonathan, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Never better. So I thought I would just lead you in before we get it's scary. Before we get to some thoughts on Will Levis, and I know Amanda has a ton of questions to ask you, and so do I. But I thought we'd just lead it in with today's tough question so we can go ahead and set this up. And it's brought to you by Zool Beer Company. Zool Beer Company, xulbeer.com, the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports. So, Amanda, the question, however you want to phrase it, around a score prediction, I guess we could say Tennessee wins by 10 plus, Tennessee wins by 20 plus, Kentucky wins. You phrase it however you want to. And as you do that, I'll ask Jonathan Crompton right off the top, how do you see this game playing out before we break down some of the intricacies?
Obviously, I've got us winning, but if I'm Kentucky, to me, I'm not going to say only chance because their defense has to play really well against us. But to me, the deciding factor for Kentucky would be, can they play ball control? Can they get into 2 and 3 tight end sets? And can they milk the clock the whole game to keep us off the field? If we're on the field, we score a lot of points, right? Everybody knows that. Kentucky's coaches are not dumb in that sense. They've got to play lights out on defense, and I think they know that. So the way sometimes in games like this, your best defense is a good offense. If they keep us off the field, we can't score. So that would be kind of – I'm interested to see on what they do offensively. Do they come out and try to run their normal spread and then 3 tight ends and blah, 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 or do they just say, screw you guys, we're going to play heavy the whole game? That being said, I still have us winning by double digits.
I do too. So, Amanda, how do you want to phrase the question for our prediction on today's tough question brought to you by Zool Beer Company?
I have what will be the outcome of the Tennessee versus Kentucky game. Kentucky wins by more than 10. Kentucky wins by less than 10. Tennessee wins by more than 10. And Tennessee wins by less than 10.
Love it. So, think we'll get I think Tennessee gets Cedric Tillman back this week. That's what I've heard. I'm not reporting this. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Jonathan, let me ask you this: when you bring a guy back in, he may be. I think Brew McCoy probably has the greatest upside, but nevertheless, Cedric Tillman is the most accomplished of the receivers pre the past couple of weeks with Jalen. When you bring a guy in, no matter how good he is there a transition period of getting him back into the game that could upset flow a little bit just because he hadn't been around a while?
Typically there could be a little bit, but if it's you're returning number one, not really the biggest factor is the speed of our offense. Excuse me. And him getting back into game shape of that. I mean, you can mimic that all day long. It's still not the same until you get into the game with the crowd and the emotions all flowing all at once. It's a different feel. So that would be, to me, ideal. We could get him back this week to get him ready for next week as well, because you want him down the stretch. Excuse me, you want him down the stretch. You want him back earlier if possible. But there'll be a little bit of fatigue by him because, I mean, we play so fast offensively that he's not, like I said, you can't mimic game reps. You can do all you want. You can condition all you want. There's still just something different about the game rep and then the mental capacity to deal with it when you're tired and the crowd's chanting and all that stuff. So I think that's going to be the biggest factor.
We talked about the treatment of quarterbacks, and again, you know this more than anybody, and I think we touched on this last time, but now we've seen Will Levis get more beaten up and more hurt and go into the locker room and come out a new person, basically. So I think it's very clear that Kentucky is willing to sacrifice Will Levis a bit to win those games.
Yeah.
Do you think that'll be a factor in this game?
Yes, I definitely do. And I'm curious as how much it is Kentucky willing to sacrifice him, or he's just trying to get that tough guy persona. We've all played with those people. that are like, oh, well, I'm gonna. Yeah, everybody's tough when you're playing football. I mean, you know what I mean? You're physically trying to harm the other person.
Well, except for kickers. But anyway.
Oh, hey, there's some kickers that are stick. Pat McAfee, you ain't messing with him.
No, I'm not messing with him.
Like, there are some kickers and punters that are just like jacked, and you're like, okay, you can
Wisconsin's
play for you. Just because you're flexible, you got a strong legs, always why you're a kicker, right? Yeah. No, but so that's kind of my thing. Is like I'm curious because Amanda, you're 100% right. It does seem like Kentucky's willing to just say, hey, well, just screw your bodily harm for the next 30 years. We want to win now. But it also feels like he loves that tough guy persona. I'm not hating on that. But at what point does that stop being the number one priority? Right. And I'm not saying go out there and fake an injury. But this is where I go back to, you look at the draft boards for quarterbacks. There's no way in hell somebody's going to convince me that he is a top 10 quarterback. Now, I take it back. Maybe top 10 because the draft class is kind of weak.
Yeah.
But he is not a top 5 quarterback to me. Do I think he's a phenomenal athlete? Yes. Do I think he can throw the ball through a brick wall? Yes. Do I think that you can tell him to go read a full field concept and make the touch ball to a check down? Not a chance in hell. Okay? And that is not a slight. That just means he's going to throw it 100 miles an hour no matter who he's throwing it to. That's not a top 5 quarterback to me. So with that being the case, Kentucky does thrive off of him. That's why I also believe, I could be wrong, that they do try to play the ball controls. I saw somebody comment earlier, oh, well, if they play ball control, it hurts them too. Yes, but it also keeps the ball out of our hands, and it lets him stop taking as many hits because he's going to take some hits. He does some dumb things. He holds the ball way too long. And that's going to play a factor. So that's where we want Jeremy Banks to just go light him up within the whistle, no roughing the passer, and make him feel it. We do a good job of that this year. We didn't last year. So I do think that will play a factor, that Kentucky is just almost reckless abandonment with their quarterback on how he gets treated with the hits.
Yep. No, I agree. If you have a question for Jonathan, you want to post it on the message board, go ahead and do that. Former Vols Jonathan Crompton, nice to join us each and every Friday. I talk to Cooper Mays each Sunday. Please like, subscribe, and share, and that is on our YouTube page as we speak. And I noticed a big difference with Cooper from the previous week. Obviously, playing UT Martin and playing Alabama, those are two way different things. But the other thing that he said, I said, it seems like you feel great. This is right before we started recording. And I said, how much of that is the opponent? You had to play less than 50 plays. He said, that's a big part of it. But he also said a big part of it is not getting hurt early in the year. You've been there, getting hurt early in the year. How in the world are you supposed to ever get healthy again? Because he never was able to last year, admittedly. Yeah.
I mean, and I know it sounds awful, but that's just what it is. And that's where Amanda's question was so good about Will Levis. He's not going to get healthy the rest of this year. There's nothing he can do to get healthy, because the way you get healthy, R&R, rest and recovery. In season, they don't give you time to rest and recover. You can't. So that's where, like for us, staying healthy, and it was almost a godsend that we had UT Martin last week before this little stretch, because that helped our guys get out of the game early, right? Go stand over there and cheer, because that is a big thing. And look at Alabama the past, 15 years. They always play Western Carolina or UT Chattanooga the week before the Iron Bowl. That is a strategy move. I understand why they do it. Everybody hates on it, and I'm one of them. But if you think about it for the long-term, long haul of the season, it makes the most sense. You got to keep guys healthy early, because you're going to get banged up in the middle at some point. You're playing in the SEC. Doesn't matter. You're going to get banged up.
John, I'll go back even further. In the mid-'90s, Florida always played like the University of Southwest Missouri, Annapolis, Texas A&M / I mean, they were schools I hadn't heard of. Mm-hmm. So it did two things. It gave them 2 preseason games. And the other thing it did is if they had players in trouble, which they did quite a bit, they were suspended for those games and not the Tennessee games.
100%. 100% agree with that. And I think some teams are starting to get away from it a little bit, not fully, but especially with the week 1 neutral site matchups. Thank God we've gotten away from that, because otherwise, let's call it is. A lot of those games aren't that fun to watch from the fans' perspective. Yeah. They're done by way before halftime, latest at halftime. Then you're going, okay, what do we watch now? Right. So I am glad they've gotten away from it. But to Cooper's point, man, staying healthy in this sport, one, is super tough, especially at the O-line, D-line position. But if you can stay as healthy as possible with our type of system, we're running the ball really effectively right now. And the healthier we are down the stretch, the better we're going to be. I mean, it's just – and obviously we need depth, but you're starters for a reason.
So we talked about the possibility of seeing Lane Kiffin versus Josh Heupel in the SEC championship. I think after last week, we see that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, son of a
gun. It was pretty rough. So what do you think? I know this is off topic, but what do you think LSU's defense was able to do to Ole Miss that they weren't able to do to Tennessee? And what does that mean with Ole Miss beating Kentucky? How bad do you think Tennessee will beat Kentucky, considering it looks like Tennessee's offense is just way better?
And I mean, that's a great question. And the only thing I keep coming back to is I think the deciding factor for Kentucky is Kentucky's offense. How do they want to play? If they play balls to the wall, we beat them pretty bad. They cannot keep up with us on their defense with what we do offensively and how fast we go. If they try to slow the game down on their offense, it'll keep us off rhythm, keep our guys waiting. The longer our offense is sitting, it's like a baseball pitcher. The colder you get in between innings, the less likely you are to go back out there, right? More likely they're going to bring in a reliever. So you get them off or out of rhythm and kind of, off track, off subject. And that's where, if I'm Kentucky, that's what I'm doing. That's just, but here, if you think about it, they're the only team from here on out that we played that has that ability to go 3 tight ends and just run the ball. Georgia's 3 tight ends they're not trying to pound the rock in that way. Kentucky, they have to. That's their MO. It's run, play action. So that's why I think this right now is arguably I wouldn't say the scariest, but the next game is the most crucial game. But this one is really the most crucial game of the season for our defense to bow their neck and show what they can do, because we should beat them by 25 points. Keyword should. That doesn't mean we're going to.
So I said that I would open it up to questions on the message board. And the very first one, Jonathan, I don't know if you can see it, but this is one heck of a rabbit hole to jump down into. Don said, John, I've always been curious. Seeing what Dave Clawson has done at Wake is remarkable. Was it a chemistry thing in 2008 with him and Fulmer? Because you had a complete turnaround in 2009. That is the biggest rabbit hole you could jump into.
It is. And I'm grown and old enough to kind of say what I really want to say. But and I appreciate a comment earlier that says that Jonathan's just blunt and to the point. I have gotten that point older in life because football makes you very the bad side of football makes you very harsh.
Jaded?
Yeah, that's a perfect word, yes.
I think that's just life, because I'm jaded as well. And I didn't play football.
And the funny part is, me and David became good friends. Me and my wife go to Wake Forest games and watch him and support him because I love what he does. I love him as a human being. I think it is hard. I think it is very hard to meet a more genuine human being than Dave. I really do. And I was also very scarred and jaded at the time when I was 20 years old. And I was like, man, screw everybody, blah, blah, blah. Because you don't know the behind the scenes stuff. And I'm not going to say a lot of the behind closed doors deals, but just understand he is one hell of a football coach. And if you want to look at Wake Forest athletic director, look at Wake Forest football coach, where did they come from? Right? And look at Wake Forest basketball coach, who used to be at the University of Tennessee as well. Wake Forest does a lot of really good things that people tried to say that when they were at Tennessee, they were the worst things in sliced bread, blah, blah, blah. The common denominator was one human being, if you can read between the lines of that. And now look at the success when they're not around said individual. And I will be a Dave Clawson and a Wake Forest fan because of John Curry and Dave Clawson, as long as they're there. Because of the human being factor. It is not always about wins and losses. Understand, we're in a competitive environment. Got to win. You got to win more than you lose. But they understand that if you develop great young men and build relationships with them and care about them and their family and their upbringing and how they raise their next family, you build relationships. That stuff didn't happen at the University of Tennessee. That's why I'm a Wake Forest fan as well.
Yeah, and I think you may be referring to somebody whose name rhymes with Billup. But anyway, the one thing I will give Dave Clawson a lot of credit for, okay, because I thought at the time that was a bad hire, and then we'll get back to Kentucky. And the reason I thought it was a bad hire is because I thought that the flip-flopping of offensive lines, if I'm sure you remember that, when they would take –
I had conversations with him about it.
Yeah. And he has put that – he realized that was not good. And he doesn't do that anymore, right?
No. Oh, no.
So, I mean, he learned – but my thinking was going in, you've got a former offensive line coach, and then you've got this guy who wants to flip-flop offensive lines. That chemistry is never going to work, and it never did.
And I don't think you're wrong on that by any means. Like I said, there was a lot of stuff that was behind closed doors that I will not say that happened. And the older you get on our side as the players and their side as the coaches, you kind of learn from your mistakes. If you don't learn from it, then it wasn't a good mistake. If you learn from it, it was a phenomenal mistake. And Dave has done nothing but tremendous things since he left there.
Agreed.
You know what I'm saying? At Bowling Green, like everywhere he's been, he's done tremendous things and has built the team's character, built the community around the team, and understands what it is to be human, to be dealing with 18 to 21-year-olds and letting them be themselves, right, within the system. And that's what I wish things would have been different, because when I say one of the best humans, I genuinely mean he is one of the best human beings I've ever met.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty phenomenal. I remember he won me over when he referred to G-Gun, when Gerald Jones ran out of the Wildcat package, and John Adams and I named that on the radio. And he actually used that phrase, which was a big deal to us. And I can remember somebody that rhymes with Billup asked me, "Where did that come from?" And I said, "John Adams made it up." He goes, that was not a happy moment after practice. Sorry, Amanda, go right ahead. That was
you're
just
fine.
reminiscing on the good days.
I mean, for him to pick up on that from John. Yeah, I mean, John Adams was very critical at the time of the program and critical of somebody that rhymes with Billup. But for him to pick that up, for Dave to pick up the G-Gun out of the paper and actually use that, it was one of the special moments of my career.
Oh yeah, I can definitely imagine.
Because it riled somebody up that.
But notice what you're saying though. That's the stuff that was more important to the program than the actual program. Right. And I'm not talking bad. I'm just stating facts.
It partly riled. I got riled up by that person because of the way some people were treated, and you included. So I will just put that to bed, and I don't do agenda stuff, and that's where I stand on that. That's why I'm a big fan of John and what he went through, which there's a lot behind the scenes that he's not going to share, and I've agreed not to share, and it was pretty rough for a long time.